A quiet welcome to Restful Historian. Tonight, we embark on a tranquil journey through time to uncover the timeless wonders of the Persian Empire, a civilization of immense beauty, profound history, and enduring legacy. Imagine a land far to the east, where deserts stretch endlessly and mountains rise like sentinels against the horizon. In the soft breeze, echoes of ancient power linger, telling stories of a people whose ambition, artistry, and innovation wove a grand tapestry that shaped the world. The Persian Empire stood not only as a conqueror of lands but as a beacon of culture, vision, and remarkable tolerance, qualities that set it apart in its time and beyond. Picture the golden light of a setting sun bathing forgotten ruins, or the warm flicker of oil lamps illuminating the grandeur of royal palaces. This is the story of an empire gracefully being born, and we will explore its origins with quiet reverence and care. Together, we'll delve into Persia's earliest beginnings, discovering the resilient people who first called this land home and tracing the roots of greatness that would grow into one of history's most celebrated civilizations. With a slow, unhurried rhythm, we'll let the tale unfold, inviting you to rest and reflect as the gentle currents of history carry you. Our gentle journey into ancient Persia now takes us even further back in time. We begin not with the grandeur of empires, but with a profound and gradual movement. Imagine vast, ancient grasslands stretching across Central Asia. Across these immense expanses, around 1000 BCE, as the age of bronze slowly gave way to the strength of iron, a subtle shifting began. Groups of peoples, known as Indo-Iranian tribes, started their long, deliberate migration southward. These were not a single, unified people, but rather many different tribal groups. They shared common roots, speaking related languages and holding similar cultural beliefs. Their way of life was deeply connected to the land, centered around the gentle rhythm of horse breeding and herding. They were often called Aryans, a term meaning the noble ones in their ancient tongue. Their long journey was not swift or sudden. It was a movement spanning centuries, as they gradually settled across the sweeping lands we now recognize as Iran, Afghanistan, and parts of Central Asia. The plateau that would one day bear their name greeted these newcomers with a striking contrast. It was a land of beautiful extremes. Here, towering, silent mountains gave way to shimmering salt deserts. Yet, within these arid expanses, fertile valleys appeared like green oases, pockets of life amid the vastness. This unique geography would profoundly influence how their civilization developed. The mountains created natural boundaries, gently separating communities, while simultaneously encouraging innovation in farming, water management, and trade. In the north, the majestic Alborz Mountains formed a natural, protective barrier along the Caspian Sea. To the west, the formidable Zagros Mountains stood as a grand boundary with Mesopotamia, the ancient land between the rivers. Between these mountain ranges lay a high central plateau. It was often dry and seemingly forbidding, yet it was punctuated by those very pockets of remarkable fertility. Here, these early settlers carefully established themselves. They adapted to their new homeland with incredible ingenuity and quiet persistence. The scarcity of water, a constant challenge, gently taught them the values of conservation and cooperation. It was here that they developed a truly ingenious marvel, the qanats. Imagine these as silent, underground aqueducts. They were carefully dug tunnels, sometimes stretching for miles, that transported precious water from mountain aquifers down to their settlements. This allowed agriculture to quietly flourish even in locations that seemed impossible. These ancient engineering wonders, some of which remain functional to this very day, reveal a people who quietly refused to surrender to environmental limitations. Their persistence was a testament to their spirit. By the 8th century BCE, two major groups had slowly crystallized from among these early peoples. They became distinct through their geography, their unique dialects, and their evolving political organization. These were the Medes in the northwest and the Parsa tribe in the southwest. The Medes settled in the region south of the Caspian Sea and in the central Zagros Mountains. This territory was rich in pastureland, perfectly supporting their cherished traditions of horse breeding and the art of cavalry warfare. Towns slowly began to emerge here, centered around gently fortified settlements. Here, tribal leaders quietly established their authority. Ecbatana, now modern Hamon, gradually became their principal city. Ancient accounts, like that of Herodotus, describe it as a place of 7 concentric walls, with battlements painted in different colors, the innermost said to be plated with silver and gold, a vision of quiet splendor. Further south, in the region of Pars, which is modern Fars province, the Parsa tribe developed their own distinct society. They lived in more arid lands, becoming masters of irrigation and a unique form of dry farming. Their settlements were more scattered, carefully built around reliable water sources. They maintained a strong tribal structure, deeply focused on kinship bonds and local loyalty. The relative isolation of this region, away from the immediate gaze of the great powers of that era, allowed them to develop their identity relatively undisturbed, at least at first. Both the Medes and the Parsa were organized into tribes and clans. They were led by chieftains who commanded through a gentle blend of hereditary right and proven ability. Primarily, they were pastoralists, moving peacefully between seasonal pastures with their flocks. Yet, where possible, they also practiced agriculture, maintaining permanent settlements in those fertile valleys. These early societies, however, did not develop in isolation. To their west lay the powerful Neo-Assyrian Empire. This was perhaps the first true military superpower in history. The Assyrians, with their formidable iron weapons, their highly organized professional army, and their relentless expansion policies, cast a long and heavy shadow over the entire Near East. Their records from the 9th century BCE contain the earliest written mentions of the Medes and the Parsa, often simply as targets of military campaigns or as tribute pairs. This constant Assyrian threat, a persistent shadow, quietly forced the previously independent tribes to consider greater cooperation and political centralization. The Medes, being closer to the Assyrian borders, felt this pressure most acutely. Tribal alliances formed and dissolved, like shifting desert sands, as leaders sought effective responses to Assyrian aggression. According to Herodotus, it was a leader named Darius who first began to unite the Median tribes into something resembling a kingdom, around 700 BCE. Whether this account is strictly historical or woven with threads of legend, archaeological evidence gently confirms that by the late 8th century BCE, a more centralized Median society was indeed emerging. We find fortified settlements and clear evidence of social stratification, pointing to a more organized community. The opportunity for greater autonomy came with the gradual weakening of Assyria in the 7th century BCE. Under the leadership of Cyaxares, who ruled from 625 to 585 BCE, the Medes truly transformed. From a loose confederation, they became a formidable kingdom with imperial ambitions of their own. Cyaxares quietly reorganized the Median military along professional lines, dividing his forces into specialized units of spearmen, archers, and cavalry. This military revolution gave the Medes a fighting force capable of challenging even the mighty Assyria. When Babylon, another ancient power, rebelled against Assyrian rule, Cyaxares seized the moment. He formed a powerful alliance with the Babylonians under their leader, Nabopolassar. In 612 BCE, this alliance achieved what had once seemed utterly impossible: the sack of Nineveh, Assyria's great and glorious capital. The fall of this mighty city reverberated throughout the ancient world, like a soft but powerful echo. It marked the definitive end of Assyrian dominance and gently announced the arrival of new powers on the international stage. The Medes, in this new world order, claimed the northern portions of the former Assyrian Empire. Their rule now extended across northern Mesopotamia and eastern Anatolia. Under this new Median hegemony, the Persian tribe, to the south, remained subordinate allies, or perhaps gentle vassals. Their local leaders maintained authority, but they acknowledged the overall overlordship of the Medes. This relationship, seemingly a quiet arrangement, would prove profoundly fateful for the future of the entire Near East. The Median Empire, though relatively short-lived compared to what would follow, established important precedents for later state-building in the region. It demonstrated that these peoples could not only resist the traditional powers of Mesopotamia but could also create their own sophisticated imperial systems. The Medes gently adopted and adapted elements of Mesopotamian administrative practices while maintaining their distinctly cultural traits. Urban centers quietly grew, trade networks expanded, and artistic traditions flourished, blending indigenous styles with Mesopotamian, Eurasian, and Scythian influences. Ecbatana, the Median capital, became renowned for its splendor, a worthy rival to the great cities of Mesopotamia and a quiet symbol of this emerging power. Amid these political transformations, an equally significant spiritual revolution was slowly taking shape. Sometime during this period, scholars gently debate the exact timing. A prophet named Zarathustra, known as Zoroaster in Greek sources, began preaching a reformed religion. This would become one of the world's oldest continuously practiced faiths, Zoroastrianism. Zarathustra was born into a society where polytheistic beliefs and ritual sacrifices were common. But he experienced profound divine revelations that led him to proclaim a radically different vision. He taught the existence of a single, supreme deity, Ahura Mazda, the wise Lord, who embodied wisdom and light. Opposing Ahura Mazda was Angra Mainyu Ahriman, the destructive spirit. All of existence, Zarathustra taught, was caught in a cosmic struggle between these two forces. Unlike many ancient religions, Zoroastrianism gently emphasized individual moral choice. Humans were not passive pawns of the gods, but active participants in this cosmic battle between truth, Asher, and falsehood, Drudge, between light and darkness. Through good thoughts, good words, and good deeds, believers could align themselves with Ahura Mazda and contribute to the ultimate triumph of good over evil. This was a powerful and liberating concept. The prophet's teachings were carefully preserved in the Gathas, 17 hymns that form the oldest part of the Avesta, Zoroastrianism's sacred text. These profound spiritual poems reveal a sophisticated theological system that grappled with deep questions of free will, the very purpose of existence, and the nature of the divine. These concerns would later, gently, influence the development of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. The spread of Zoroastrianism among the regional populations was gradual and uneven. Traditional religious practices persisted alongside the new teachings, and local variations slowly developed. But the faith's emphasis on truth, ethical behavior, and cosmic order resonated deeply with cultural values across the plateau. It provided a spiritual framework that could gently unite diverse communities. The religion also quietly shaped concepts of kingship and governance throughout the region. A righteous ruler, in this new spiritual light, was one who embodied and defended Asher, truth, order, against the forces of Drudge, falsehood, chaos. This ideological foundation would later help legitimize imperial rule and inspire the administrative policies of future kings. By 650 BCE, the stage was truly set for the next chapter in the region's history. The Median Empire had established itself as a major political force in the Near East. The peoples of the southern territories, the Persia, had crystallized their own distinct identity, developing unique cultural and political traditions while gently absorbing influences from their Median kinsmen and neighboring civilizations. The foundations were firmly in place: a strong military tradition, early experience in governance, burgeoning architectural and artistic achievements, and a profound religious outlook that emphasized moral choice and cosmic order. What remained was for a visionary leader to gently unite these elements into something unprecedented: a universal empire. An empire that would one day stretch from the distant Indus River to the sun-kissed Mediterranean, from the vast steppes of Central Asia to the gentle cataracts of the Nile. That leader would emerge from among the Parsa tribe, a prince named Kurosh, known to the Western world as Cyrus. His vision would transform not just the region's history, but the very concept of empire itself. Under his guidance, and that of his successors, a civilization would achieve heights of political organization, cultural achievement, and religious tolerance that would softly influence all subsequent empires. But in 650 BCE, this imperial future remained unwritten. The Medes ruled from their mountain strongholds. The Parsa developed their distinct society in the southern highlands. And the ancient centers of power in Mesopotamia, Egypt, and Anatolia continued their age-old rivalries and alliances. None could have imagined how completely the world order would be transformed in the coming century by the quiet rise of a new power. The story of the Achaemenid Empire, the first great dynasty to truly unite the entire plateau, was about to begin. Before continuing our journey through these historical events, we must pause to explore the even deeper, mythic foundations that shaped Iranian identity for millennia. Long before written records documented the rise and fall of empires, stories were passed down through generations. These were tales of heroes and monsters, of kings and demons, of love and betrayal. These stories would eventually be collected, beautifully, in the 10th century CE by the poet Ferdowsi in his masterpiece, the Shahnameh, or Book of Kings. Though compiled long after the fall of the ancient Achaemenid Empire, the Shahnameh preserves mythical and legendary traditions that date back to the very earliest days of settlement on the Iranian plateau. These narratives serve not merely as entertainment. They are vessels of cultural memory, repositories of ancient wisdom, and foundations for national identity during times of both glory and subjugation. The epic gently begins with the creation of the world and the first humans, then traces a succession of mythical dynasties. The earliest of these was the Pishtadian dynasty, founded by King Kaimaz, the first human ruler. His grandson, Hasheng, is credited with discovering fire and teaching humanity to forge metal tools. These primordial kings established civilization, taught agriculture, and set the gentle precedents for righteous rule. Following them came the Kianian dynasty, whose kings battled the demons of Mazandaran. Their stories blend supernatural elements with echoes of historical conflicts between settled peoples and nomadic raiders. Throughout all these tales runs a consistent theme: the quiet struggle to maintain order against the forces of chaos, to defend civilization against barbarism, to uphold truth against falsehood. This eternal struggle finds its most powerful expression in the central narrative of Rostam, the greatest of all Iranian heroes. Born to the warrior Zal and his beloved Rudabeh, Rostam grew to possess supernatural strength and courage. Riding his faithful steed, Raksh, he served multiple generations of kings, defending the realm against both external enemies and internal corruption. Among his many exploits, none is more poignant than the story of Rostam and Sorab. This is a tale that beautifully captures the tragic dimensions of fate and the painful complexities of duty. The story begins when Rostam, traveling in a foreign land, meets and falls in love with Princess Tamina. After spending a brief time with her, he returns to his homeland, leaving behind a special bracelet for his unborn child. Years pass, and Tamina raises their son, Sorab, in secret. The boy grows to be a mighty warrior, much like his father, but knows of Rostam only through his mother's loving stories. When war gently breaks out between their respective kingdoms, fate tragically brings father and son to the battlefield on opposing sides, each unaware of the other's true identity. The two champions meet in single combat between the armies. For 2 days, they wrestle and fight, evenly matched in skill and strength. On the third day, Rostam, drawing on his greater experience, finally overcomes the young warrior and delivers a mortal wound with his dagger. As Sorab lies dying, Rostam discovers the bracelet he had left with Tamina so many years before. In that moment of horrific recognition, Rostam realizes he has killed his own son. Sorab's last words to his father are ones of forgiveness and tragic wisdom. "It is not your fault. This was written in the stars from the beginning of time. How could you know? My mother told me how to recognize you, but my pride kept me from revealing myself first." Rostam's grief knows no bounds. He contemplates suicide, but ultimately chooses to live with his pain, carrying the immense burden of his unwitting crime for the rest of his long life. The tale ends with a funeral worthy of a prince, as both armies join in mourning the young hero. This story, perhaps the most famous in all Iranian literature, resonates with universal themes: the blindness of human perception, the inexorable flow of fate, and the clash between personal desires and societal duties. Yet, it also speaks to specifically Iranian cultural values, the importance of family bonds, the deep respect due to both youth and age, the nobility found in accepting one's destiny with courage, and the devastating consequences when communication gently fails. For listeners in ancient times, these stories offered more than mere entertainment. They provided models for behavior. They were cautionary tales about the misuse of power and gentle reminders that even the greatest heroes have flaws. The Shahnameth's narratives of kingship were particularly significant, offering a mirror in which actual rulers could quietly measure their conduct. The ideal king in these stories is just, generous, wise, and humble before divine forces. He consults with advisors, respects traditions, defends the weak, and acknowledges his own limitations. By contrast, tyrannical kings are prideful, greedy, cruel, and dismissive of counsel, and they invariably meet bad ends. One such cautionary figure is Zahak, who allowed evil to whisper in his ear and grew serpents from his shoulders that had to be fed with human brains. His reign brought 800 years of darkness to the world, until the blacksmith cave gently raised the banner of rebellion and helped Prince Feridun overthrow the tyrant. These mythic kings established many of the symbols and ceremonies that would later be adopted by historical rulers. The Farah, the divine glory that legitimized kingship, appears throughout the legends as a tangible aura, softly visible around rightful sovereigns. Royal insignia like the crown, throne, signet ring, and ceremonial mace all feature prominently. Even architectural elements described in legendary palaces would gently influence the design of historical structures like Persepolis. Music, poetry, and feasting, central to court culture throughout history, appear in the Shahnameth as royal arts established by mythical kings. The legendary King Jamshid is credited with creating Nowruz, the Iranian New Year celebrated at the spring equinox, a joyous festival that continues to this day throughout the cultural sphere of Iranian influence. The mythical geography of the Shahnameth also helped shape imperial identity. The epic portrays a world divided between Iran, the realm of light and civilization, and Turin, the realm of darkness and barbarism to the north. This symbolic geography would later gently inform actual foreign policy, especially toward the nomadic peoples of Central Asia. While we now turn our attention back to the historical narrative and the rise of Cyrus the Great, it is important to remember that these myths remained alive in Iranian consciousness throughout the imperial period. The Achaemenid kings, though engaged in practical matters of governance and conquest, drew deep inspiration and legitimacy from these ancient tales. They consciously positioned themselves as heirs to the legendary Kianians and protectors of the cosmic order established by the first mythical kings. Even as armies marched to Egypt and Greece, as royal messengers sped along the empire's roads, and as administrators managed the vast bureaucracy, these stories were told and retold at court and by campfire alike. They provided a shared cultural foundation that helped unite the diverse peoples of the realm. They gently reminded everyone, from the great king on his throne to the lowliest subject, that they were participants in a grand narrative stretching back to the very dawn of civilization. The empire was built not just by armies and administrators, but by poets and storytellers who gave its people a sense of shared destiny and common values. As we follow the rise of Cyrus and his successors, we should remember that behind their political and military achievements lay this rich tapestry of myth that helped make sense of their world and inspired their grandest ambitions. As the 6th century BCE dawned, few could have predicted that a prince from a subordinate tribe would soon create the largest empire the world had yet seen. The stage for this transformation was set during the latter years of Median dominance, when a child named Kurosh, known to the Western world as Cyrus, was born to the ruling family of Anshan, a region within the land of Pars. The details of this future conqueror's early life are gently shrouded in legend. The Greek historian Herodotus tells us that the young prince was the grandson of the Median king Astyages through his daughter, Mandane, who married a nobleman named Cambyses. According to the tale, Astyages dreamed that his grandson would one day overthrow him. Alarmed, he ordered the infant killed, but the official entrusted with the task secretly gave the child to a shepherd to raise instead. The native sources tell a different story, portraying the young ruler as a legitimate prince of the Achaemenid lineage, a dynasty that had ruled in Pars for generations. Archaeological evidence gently suggests the Achaemenids were indeed a powerful family in southwestern Iran, and that they acknowledged Median overlordship while maintaining considerable autonomy in their homeland. Whatever the truth of his origins, the founder of what would become a great empire emerged as the ruler of Anshan sometime around 559 BCE. His early reign gave little indication of the conquests to come. He was simply one minor king among many, quietly paying tribute to the mighty Median Empire. The world this ambitious leader inhabited was dominated by 4 great powers. To the north lay Media, ruled by King Astyages from his capital at Ecbatana. To the west was Lydia, controlling much of Anatolia under King Croesus, whose legendary wealth would become proverbial. Further west stood Babylon, where King Nabonidus presided over the fertile plains of Mesopotamia and their ancient cities. And to the south, the pharaohs of Egypt maintained their ancient civilization along the Nile. These powers existed in a delicate balance, engaging in diplomacy, trade, and occasional warfare with one another. None suspected that a 5th power was about to emerge and gently overwhelm them all. The first step in the ascent of the Achaemenid came with a quiet rebellion against Median rule. The accounts differ on what sparked this conflict. Herodotus claims Astyages provoked it through his increasingly tyrannical behavior. Babylonian records suggest that Cyrus was chosen by his own troops to lead them against the Medes. Whatever the cause, the outcome is clear. The forces of Anshan marched against the Median king around 550 BCE. Against all expectations, Cyrus's forces defeated the more numerous Median army. More surprising still, after capturing Ecbatana, the victorious leader did not sack the city or slaughter its inhabitants, as was common practice in that age. Instead, he portrayed himself not as a foreign conqueror, but as a legitimate successor to the Median throne, one who would respect Median traditions and incorporate the Medes into his new realm as partners rather than subjects. This policy of imperial integration, through gentle respect rather than harsh subjugation, would become a hallmark of Achaemenid rule. It would also be a key factor in the remarkable stability of the growing empire. But before this grand vision could be fully implemented, the new sovereign faced immediate challenges from the other great powers surrounding his newly won territory. King Croesus of Lydia saw the fall of Media as both a threat and an opportunity. Concerned about the quiet rise of Achaemenid power, but also eager to expand his own realm eastward, Croesus consulted the famous oracle at Delphi. The oracle's ambiguous reply to King Croesus of Lydia was, indeed, deeply fateful. It whispered that if Croesus attacked the Persians, he would destroy a great empire. Croesus, in his eagerness, his heart perhaps swelling with the confidence of his legendary wealth and the might of his kingdom, interpreted this prophecy to mean he would utterly destroy the Persian Empire. He did not realize, in his quiet contemplation, that the oracle, with its subtle, deceptive wisdom, spoke of his own. Thus, in a profound moment of confident miscalculation, Croesus, the famed king of the Lydians, led his powerful army eastward around 547 BCE, choosing to meet the rapidly rising tide of Cyrus. Imagine, if you will, the impending clash of these two mighty forces, each representing a formidable power of the ancient world. The Lydians, renowned for their immense wealth, which stemmed from the gold-rich sands of the Pactolus River, were also celebrated for their formidable cavalry. They were, in fact, the very first people to issue standardized coinage, a silent testament to their economic sophistication. But Cyrus, with his well-disciplined Persian and Median forces, was more than just a military leader. He was a master strategist, a visionary who understood the nuances of warfare. The initial battles between these two titans were fierce, marked by brave charges and determined stands, yet they proved indecisive. Sensing a tactical pause, Croesus eventually retreated to his magnificent capital city, Sardis. This was a city universally renowned for its seemingly impregnable fortifications and its legendary, almost mythical, wealth. Croesus, secure within its towering walls, believed he was safe for the winter, fully expecting Cyrus to follow the seasonal custom of halting campaigns during the colder months. He felt, perhaps, a gentle calm before the storm he did not foresee. But Cyrus was a king of relentless determination, a man who saw opportunities where others saw obstacles. Defying conventional wisdom, he chose to press on, launching a daring and utterly unexpected assault on Sardis in the heart of winter. His keen-eyed soldiers, perhaps driven by the chill of the season or the sheer will of their leader, discovered a hidden path leading up the city's seemingly impregnable walls, a narrow, steep route that had been left unguarded precisely because of its perilous nature. Imagine the quiet, creeping surprise, then the growing alarm, as Persian soldiers, like silent shadows, suddenly appeared within the city's supposedly secure confines. The defenses, breached from within, crumbled. Sardis fell swiftly, with astonishing rapidity. And with its fall, the immensely wealthy and culturally rich Lydian Empire, a power that had gracefully dominated Asia Minor for centuries, came to a quiet, almost poetic end. What happened next was a profound testament to Cyrus's truly unique approach to empire. Contrary to the brutal, often devastating practices of many ancient conquerors who would massacre defeated rulers and enslave populations, Cyrus treated King Croesus with remarkable kindness and profound respect. He spared Croesus's life, even inviting him to become a trusted advisor and a respected member of his court. Accounts suggest that Croesus, initially awaiting execution on a pyre, was saved by a sudden downpour, which Cyrus interpreted as a divine sign. This act of clemency, this gentle treatment of a defeated foe, was virtually unheard of in the annals of ancient warfare. It began to subtly yet firmly cement Cyrus's reputation not just as a conqueror of immense skill, but as a wise, benevolent, and deeply humane ruler, a unifier who sought to integrate rather than merely destroy. The Lydian people, too, were generally treated with a remarkable mildness. Their cities and cherished customs were largely respected, their new place within the empire secured not by terror, but by a sense of order and fairness. With Lydia now gently absorbed into his burgeoning empire, Cyrus, with characteristic foresight, turned his attention eastward once more. Before he could truly focus on the great, ancient powers to his west, he understood the vital necessity of consolidating his vast eastern frontiers. Imagine him leading his disciplined armies through the rugged, formidable terrains of what is now Afghanistan and the expansive, sun-drenched plains of Central Asia. These were by no means easy campaigns. He faced fierce, independent nomadic tribes, such as the Sokha and the Bactrians, whose mastery of horse warfare presented unique challenges. But through a masterful blend of military prowess, shrewd diplomacy, and careful establishment of garrisons and administrative centers, he patiently extended his rule across the entire Iranian plateau. These eastern campaigns, though perhaps less vividly detailed in surviving ancient records, were absolutely crucial. They ensured the fundamental stability and the growing unity of his vast and rapidly expanding dominion, laying a solid and peaceful groundwork for future endeavors. Having meticulously secured his eastern flank, Cyrus then, with the quiet confidence of a master strategist, set his sights on the ancient jewel of Mesopotamia, Babylon. This was the greatest city of its time, a center of unparalleled wealth, profound learning, and astonishing cultural splendor. Its colossal walls were legendary for their height and thickness, seemingly defying any attempt at conquest. Babylon was then ruled by King Nabonidus, who, for reasons that remain somewhat unclear, had spent much of his reign away from the capital, devoted to the worship of the moon god Sin and leaving his son, Belshazzar, largely in charge. This perceived neglect of the traditional Babylonian gods and the powerful priesthood, combined with Nabonidus's long absences, created a subtle, growing current of unrest and dissatisfaction among the populace and the influential religious authorities, quietly eroding the king's legitimacy. In 539 BCE, Cyrus advanced steadily on Babylon. Imagine his army moving silently, purposefully across the vast plains, an immense force yet strangely devoid of the usual boisterous clamor of ancient armies. The ancient sources, including the Greek historian Herodotus and Babylonian chronicles, suggest a brilliant and audacious strategy. During a particularly significant religious festival in Babylon, while the city's inhabitants were likely distracted by the revelry, Cyrus's ingenious engineers embarked upon a daring feat. They skillfully diverted the course of the mighty Euphrates River, which flowed directly through the very heart of the city and provided its defensive moat. As the water level dramatically dropped, his troops were able to wade through the exposed riverbed, entering the city through its now vulnerable gates or under its suddenly exposed walls. The fall of Babylon, to the astonishment of the ancient world, was remarkably swift and, by the often brutal standards of antiquity, astonishingly peaceful. The Persian forces entered with little, if any, resistance. The Babylonian records themselves, most notably the famous Cyrus Cylinder, portray Cyrus not as a foreign invader brandishing a sword, but rather as a divinely chosen liberator. The native population, and especially the powerful priesthood who had been alienated by Nabonidus, seemed to have welcomed him with quiet relief, if not outright enthusiasm. This peaceful entry, a soft whisper compared to the usual thunderous roar of ancient conquest, further enhanced Cyrus's burgeoning image as a uniquely enlightened and benevolent ruler. The Cyrus Cylinder is, even today, one of the most remarkable and poignant archaeological finds related to Cyrus. Imagine this small, barrel-shaped clay cylinder, inscribed meticulously with cuneiform script. It details Cyrus's conquest of Babylon and, more importantly, explicitly outlines his progressive policies. In it, Cyrus proclaims himself chosen by the Babylonian god Marduk, a shrewd diplomatic move to legitimize his rule in the eyes of the populace. Crucially, and with immense historical significance, it speaks of his unwavering commitment to restoring the temples of various gods that had been neglected or defiled, to allowing deported peoples to return to their ancestral homelands, and to ensuring their profound religious freedom. This was a radical, almost unheard-of departure from the brutal, dehumanizing policies of the Neo-Assyrians and even the Babylonians, who frequently resorted to the mass deportation of conquered populations to break their spirit and consolidate control. For instance, the Splendor famously allowed the Jewish people, who had been held captive in Babylon for decades after the destruction of Jerusalem, to return to their homeland and begin the sacred task of rebuilding their temple. This act of profound religious tolerance, this gesture of immense kindness, cemented Cyrus's reputation as a truly just and enlightened ruler, a truly shepherd of his people. His policy was not merely about control, it was profoundly about gaining the lasting loyalty of diverse populations by deeply respecting their local customs, their cherished religions, and their ancient traditions. It was a gentle yet firm hand of governance that fostered a new era of peace and stability across a vast empire. With Babylon now peacefully integrated, Cyrus's empire, a testament to his vision and relentless effort, stretched majestically from the Aegean Sea in the distant west to the very borders of India in the Far East. It was, by any measure, the largest empire the world had ever seen, a truly vast and intricate tapestry woven from diverse peoples, countless languages, and a kaleidoscope of cultures. To effectively manage this immense and complex realm, Cyrus began to lay the fundamental administrative groundwork. He appointed satraps, or governors, to oversee different provinces, allowing them considerable local autonomy while maintaining overall imperial authority. He also initiated the development of an extensive road network and a sophisticated postal system, carefully designed to allow vital messages to travel swiftly across the immense distances of his empire. These early, foundational efforts were the quiet hum of an efficient, far-reaching administration gracefully being born, a promise of the organized splendor that would truly flourish under his successors. The end of Cyrus's remarkable life is, like his mysterious beginnings, gently tinged with a touch of intriguing uncertainty. Most ancient accounts suggest he met his demise during a campaign against fierce nomadic tribes in the northeastern parts of his sprawling empire, possibly the Matre, led by their formidable queen, Tomiris, around 530 BCE. Herodotus, with his characteristic blend of history and captivating legend, recounts a dramatic and tragic end, where Cyrus fell in battle and his head was then placed in a wineskin filled with blood by Queen Tomiris, as a symbolic act of vengeance. Other accounts, like that of Xenophon, portray a more serene and peaceful passing in his own bed. Whatever the true circumstances, he was ultimately laid to rest in a simple yet profoundly dignified tomb in his capital, Pasargadae. Imagine this serene place, a testament to a king who, despite his boundless power and grand achievements, seemed to prefer a quiet simplicity in his final resting place. Cyrus's legacy was profound, enduring, and utterly revolutionary. He wasn't merely a conqueror, he was a truly transformative figure. His innovative approach to empire building, distinctly marked by his policies of tolerance, his deep respect for local customs, and his nascent yet highly effective administration, set a new, remarkably humane standard for leadership in the ancient world. He was revered by his own people as a benevolent father figure, a shepherd of his people. Even his enemies, once vanquished, often came to admire his wisdom, his profound foresight, and his extraordinary clemency. He was known universally as Cyrus the Great, a title truly earned not just through the sheer scale of his conquests, but through the gentle, enlightened, and humane manner in which he built and governed his vast, diverse realm. He left behind a powerful, unified, and remarkably stable empire, a shining beacon of order and enlightened rule in the ancient world. The immense task of expanding and solidifying this magnificent inheritance, of nurturing this grand legacy, would now gently fall to his son, Cambyses II. The empire was indeed vast, Yet one major, ancient power still stood proudly outside its gentle embrace, the venerable civilization of Egypt. Our peaceful journey through the annals of the Persian Empire now moves to its next chapter, under the reign of Cambyses II, the son and chosen successor of Cyrus the Great. Cambyses ascended to the throne in 530 BC, bearing the immense weight of his father's unparalleled legacy. The empire, though vast and newly unified, held a quiet expectation. Could Cambyses continue to expand and solidify the grand vision Cyrus had begun? One of the last great independent powers of the ancient world, Egypt, remained outside the growing Persian dominion. This ancient land, with its timeless pyramids, its fertile Nile, and its millennia-old civilization, was a tempting prize. For Cambyses, the conquest of Egypt was not merely about ambition, it held immense strategic value, promising control over crucial trade routes and access to the rich granaries of the Nile Valley. It also carried an undeniable aura of prestige, for to conquer Egypt was to command the respect of the entire civilized world. Cambyses embarked upon this grand undertaking with meticulous preparation, much like his visionary father. Imagine the logistical challenges of moving a vast army across the desolate stretches of the Sinai Desert. To overcome this formidable natural barrier, Cambyses secured a crucial alliance with the King of Arabia. This alliance ensured that his army would have a steady supply of precious water, delivered by camel caravans, during their arduous march. He also leveraged the newly acquired naval prowess of the Phoenicians, who had come under Persian rule, to provide crucial sea support along the coast. In 525 BCE, the moment arrived. Cambyses's forces met the Egyptian army, led by Pharaoh Psamtik III, at the pivotal Battle of Pelusium, a strategic gateway near the Nile Delta. Ancient accounts speak of a fierce and desperate struggle. One intriguing, though perhaps legendary, detail from Herodotus suggests that the Persians, knowing the Egyptians held cats as sacred animals, brought cats to the front lines. The Egyptians, hesitant to harm the revered creatures, supposedly faltered, allowing the Persians to gain a decisive advantage. Regardless of such captivating tales, the Persian forces, disciplined and determined, proved utterly victorious. This battle opened the gates to Egypt, and soon after, the ancient capital of Memphis fell following a relatively short siege. With the capture of Memphis, the proud, millennia-old civilization of Egypt, one of the true cradles of human history, quietly became a province of the Achaemenid Empire. Cambyses's rule in Egypt is one of the most debated periods in his reign, often painted with contrasting brushstrokes in ancient accounts. Greek historians, particularly Herodotus, frequently portray him as a tyrannical and even mad king. They claim he desecrated Egyptian temples, mocked their gods, and even senselessly killed the sacred Apis bull. This narrative presents him as an unstable ruler who alienated his new subjects. However, native Egyptian sources, including inscriptions and archaeological evidence, offer a different, more nuanced picture. These records suggest that Cambyses initially presented himself as a legitimate pharaoh, adopting traditional Egyptian royal titles such as Mesturi, meaning offspring of Re, and Netjeri, divine Re. He also appears to have sponsored and contributed to the restoration of temples, even participating in certain religious rituals, such as those related to the Apis bull cult at Saqqara. This suggests an initial policy consistent with Cyrus's approach of integrating conquered lands by respecting their local customs and religions. The stark contrast in these accounts serves as a gentle reminder that history is often viewed through different lenses, shaped by the perspectives and biases of those who record it. Perhaps the later Greek narratives were influenced by a desire to justify subsequent Egyptian revolts against Persian rule, or by exaggerated tales that grew with time. After solidifying his grip on Egypt, Cambyses, perhaps emboldened, embarked on further ambitious campaigns to the west and south. He attempted an expedition to the rich Siwa oasis in Libya, but this force reportedly vanished in a devastating desert sandstorm, a haunting tale whispered through the sands. He also launched a difficult expedition deep into Kush, or Nubia, far to the south along the Nile. This campaign proved far more challenging than Egypt. The vast distances, the treacherous terrain, and the fierce resistance of the skilled Nubian archers led to heavy losses and ultimately a limited success. These difficulties and failures in his later campaigns, rather than any inherent madness, may have contributed to the Greek narratives of Cambyses' growing frustration or instability. As Cambyses was returning from Egypt in 522 BC, a profound crisis erupted at the very heart of the empire. This moment plunged the vast Persian realm into a period of deep turmoil. A powerful Magian priest, named Gormiter, seized this opportune moment. He audaciously proclaimed himself to be Bardia, or Smerdes, as the Greeks called him, who was Cambyses' younger brother. Cambyses had, in fact, secretly put Bardia to death before his Egyptian campaign, likely to prevent any rival claims to the throne while he was away. Gormiter's deception was remarkably effective, gaining widespread belief and support across the empire, largely because he shrewdly promised popular measures like tax reductions and military exemptions. Upon hearing of this widespread rebellion and the usurper's claim, Cambyses hastened his return from Egypt. However, in a sudden and tragic twist of fate, he died unexpectedly in Syria. The exact circumstances of his death remain shrouded in a gentle veil of mystery. Some ancient accounts suggest an accidental self-inflicted wound, others hint at suicide, perhaps in despair over the rebellion, and still others suggest assassination. Regardless of the precise cause, his sudden passing left the vast Persian Empire in a precarious state of vacuum and widespread confusion. With the legitimate king gone and a seemingly legitimate, yet utterly false, usurper on the throne, the empire plunged into an agonizing period of intense turmoil. Rebellions erupted everywhere, like countless fires sparked by a sudden wind. Each province, each city, saw local leaders rise up, boldly challenging the new, illegitimate rule. The immense empire, so carefully and recently unified by Cyrus, now seemed on the verge of splintering into countless independent pieces. It was a moment of profound fragility, where the future of this grand realm hung delicately in the balance. From amidst this swirling chaos, a new figure, resolute and determined, emerged. This was Darius, a distant cousin of Cyrus the Great, but undeniably a member of the powerful and legitimate Achaemenid royal family. Darius had served as a trusted spearbearer and general under Cambyses, witnessing the empire's strengths and its sudden vulnerability firsthand. He was a man of immense strength, strategic vision, and unwavering determination. Darius, along with 6 other Persian noblemen, was privy to the secret of Bardia's true death and recognized Gormiter's deception. They understood that the empire, if it were to survive the current maelstrom, needed its true Achaemenid leadership restored. In a daring and clandestine operation, these 7 noblemen journeyed to the remote fortress where Gormiter was residing, guarded by his loyal followers. They successfully assassinated the false Smerdes, thus ending his brief and deceptive reign. With Gormiter removed, the throne was vacant. Darius, through a compelling combination of his direct Achaemenid lineage, his strong and charismatic character, and likely some persuasive arguments among the other nobles, swiftly laid claim to the vacant throne. Ancient Greek sources, like Herodotus, even record a lively debate among the conspirators about the ideal form of government, monarchy, oligarchy, or democracy, before Darius, through his eloquence and perhaps a bit of cunning, steered them towards the monarchy, with himself as king. He proclaimed himself king, asserting that he was the rightful heir, divinely chosen by Ahura Mazda himself to restore order to the shaken realm. But claiming the throne was merely the very first step. Darius faced an enormous, daunting challenge. He had to reconquer an empire in widespread revolt. Imagine the sheer scale of the task before him. For over a year, from 522 to 521 BC, Darius was constantly on the move, leading his armies with relentless energy from one end of his vast empire to the other. Province after province rose in defiance. There were major rebellions in Media, Elam, Babylonia, which rebelled twice, Assyria, Egypt, Parthia, Margiana, and even among the core Persian tribes themselves. Each rebellion was led by a pretender claiming royal lineage or promising liberation. Each had to be met with military force, often in a series of difficult and bloody battles. Darius, a true warrior king, personally led his forces through 19 major battles within that single year, systematically crushing each uprising. He marched across rugged mountains, arid deserts, and fertile plains, pursuing rebellious leaders and restoring imperial authority. The famous Behistun inscription, which we will discuss more deeply shortly, meticulously details these campaigns, recording Darius's victories over the various rebel kings and his relentless efforts to knit the shattered empire back together, sinew by sinew. This period was a testament to Darius's incredible resolve, his profound strategic skill, and his personal bravery. He was unforgiving towards the rebel leaders, often employing harsh traditional punishments like impalement, which, while jarring to modern sensibilities, were considered necessary for re-establishing absolute authority in that brutal era. To legitimize his hard-won rule and explain the turbulent events of his ascension to the world, Darius commissioned a truly monumental inscription. This was the Behistun inscription, carved high on a sheer cliff face in western Iran, overlooking a vital ancient road. Imagine this vast, smooth rock, painstakingly etched with three versions of the same text: Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian cuneiform. Its strategic placement ensured that travelers for centuries would see his triumphant account. The inscription begins by declaring Darius's royal lineage, tracing his ancestry back to Achaemens, thus establishing his rightful claim to the throne. It then meticulously recounts his version of the false Smerdis rebellion, exposing Gormata's deception, and details each of the 19 major battles he fought to suppress the subsequent widespread revolts. It vividly describes his victories and praises Ahura Mazda for granting him strength and aiding him in restoring order and truth to the empire. This inscription served as a powerful declaration, broadcasting his divine right to rule and his unparalleled achievements in stabilizing the vast realm. For us, today, the Behistun inscription is far more than ancient propaganda. It is an invaluable historical document, one of the most important primary sources for understanding this pivotal moment in Persian history. But its significance stretches even further. It was the key that finally allowed modern scholars, in the 19th century, to decipher ancient cuneiform scripts. Just as the Rosetta Stone unlocked Egyptian hieroglyphs, Behistun provided the multilingual comparison necessary to understand the languages of ancient Mesopotamia and Persia, opening up vast ancient histories to our understanding. It was a quiet bridge, built by Darius, connecting us across millennia to these distant voices and their profound stories. With the empire finally pacified, every rebellion crushed, and his authority firmly established through both military might and divine sanction, Darius could now turn his prodigious talents towards consolidating, organizing, and truly building upon the foundations laid by Cyrus. The Achaemenid Empire, though severely shaken, had not only survived its greatest internal crisis but emerged under a new, powerful hand. It was now ready to enter its true golden age, an era of unprecedented administrative genius, grand construction, and further expansion. The vast, intricate tapestry of Persia was about to be rewoven, stronger, more organized, and more splendid than ever before. Our gentle journey now flows into the magnificent era of Darius the Great. Having quelled the widespread revolts and meticulously restitched the empire together, Darius now turned his formidable intellect not to conquest, but to construction, to organization, and to the careful cultivation of a vast, peaceful realm. He was truly the silent architect of the empire's enduring internal structure, transforming a collection of conquered lands into a cohesive, marvelously administered dominion. Imagine, if you will, a vast tapestry, intricate and colorful. Cyrus had gathered the threads, but Darius was the master weaver. He saw the immense diversity of his empire, its myriad peoples, languages, and customs, not as a weakness, but as a potential strength, provided it was managed with precision and respect. His most significant administrative innovation was the meticulous reorganization of the empire into some 20 or more satrapies, or provinces. Each satrapy was carefully overseen by a satrap, a governor appointed directly by the King of Kings. The satrap was a powerful figure, responsible for maintaining law and order, administering justice, overseeing local governance, and, crucially, collecting taxes and tribute for the imperial treasury. This system allowed for local customs and laws to persist, fostering a degree of autonomy that minimized discontent. Yet, Darius was acutely aware of the dangers of too much power in one person's hands. To prevent any satrap from growing too strong or too ambitious, he implemented a brilliant system of checks and balances, a gentle yet firm hand of centralized control. Within each satrapy, alongside the satrap, there existed two other key officials, each reporting directly and independently to the king. First, there was the royal secretary or chancellor, who acted as the king's personal representative, overseeing administrative matters and often serving as a direct channel of communication. Second, there was the garrison commander, responsible for all military forces within the satrapy. His loyalty was solely to the king, ensuring that no satrap could raise a private army or challenge central authority. And finally, perhaps the most ingenious safeguard, were the famed king's eyes and ears. These were royal inspectors, trusted agents who traveled silently and secretly throughout the empire, observing the satrap's conduct and reporting any irregularities or signs of disloyalty directly back to the throne. This intricate web of accountability ensured that power remained firmly centralized, yet operated smoothly across vast distances. Complementing this administrative structure was Darius's revolutionary taxation system. Prior to his reign, tribute was often levied arbitrarily, leading to resentment and instability. Darius introduced a standardized and fixed system of tribute for each satrapy. Each region was assessed a precise amount, primarily paid in silver talents, but also in specific goods that reflected their local produce, perhaps horses from Media, or valuable spices and ivory from distant India. This predictable system brought immense and consistent wealth into the central treasury, funding Darius's grand projects and vast army. It also brought a new sense of fairness and order to the economic life of the empire. Meticulous records were kept, ensuring transparency and efficiency in this massive economic undertaking. To further facilitate trade and economic unity across his immense realm, Darius introduced a standardized coinage. Imagine the glimmer of newly minted gold darics and silver sigloi. These coins, uniform in weight and purity, bore the image of the king, a powerful symbol of central authority and a trusted medium of exchange. This standardization greatly simplified commerce, making transactions smoother across the diverse markets of the empire. It was another thread that helped weave the disparate regions into a single, integrated economic system. Perhaps the most iconic testament to Darius's administrative genius was his development of an extensive road network. The most famous of these was the magnificent Royal Road, stretching an astounding 1,600 miles from the administrative capital of Susa, in the heart of Persia, all the way to Sardis, in Western Asia Minor. Imagine this carefully maintained highway, not just a dusty track, but a deliberate feat of engineering. Along its length, at regular intervals, were strategically placed relay stations, often a day's ride apart. Here, fresh horses and rested riders were ready, ensuring that royal messengers could travel with incredible speed. This Angaraean, or imperial postal system, was legendary for its efficiency. As the ancient saying attributed to Herodotus suggests, neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor gloom of night stays these couriers from the swift completion of their appointed rounds. This sophisticated system allowed news, commands, and intelligence to travel with unprecedented rapidity across the vast empire, binding it together with invisible lines of communication. It also facilitated the swift movement of troops and goods, further enhancing stability and prosperity. Beyond the land, Darius also looked to the seas. He ambitiously attempted to complete a canal connecting the Nile River to the Red Sea. This monumental engineering project, if successful, would have created a direct maritime link between Egypt and the Persian Gulf, opening up new trade routes to India and the Far East. Darius's inscriptions commemorating this canal project, echoing the pharaohs of old, illustrate his vision for a truly interconnected empire, harnessing nature for the benefit of his vast domain. Darius was also a king of unparalleled grandeur and monumental construction projects. While Pasargadae remained the revered capital of Cyrus, Darius established new administrative and ceremonial centers, each reflecting a facet of his powerful reign. Susa, the ancient Elamite city, was revitalized and became a primary administrative capital, strategically located as a central hub for the royal road. Ecbatana, the former Median capital, served as a cherished summer residence, offering a cooler climate for the royal court. Babylon, with its immense wealth and ancient prestige, became a vital winter capital. But the most breathtaking of all his architectural endeavors was the creation of Persepolis. Imagine this magnificent ceremonial capital, rising majestically from a colossal stone platform, built against a mountainside overlooking a vast plain. It was designed to be the ultimate dynastic center, a treasury of the empire, and the preeminent site for grand annual celebrations, particularly Nowruz, the Persian New Year, which symbolized renewal and cosmic order. The architecture of Persepolis was a stunning synthesis of styles, a reflection of the empire's incredible diversity. You can see elements of Mesopotamian grandeur, Egyptian sculptural techniques, Greek craftsmanship, and, of course, the vibrant native Iranian artistic traditions, all blending harmoniously. Skilled craftsmen and artisans were gathered from every corner of the empire, bringing their unique expertise to build this city of kings. Think of the colossal scale, the magnificent Apadana, a vast audience hall with soaring columns where the king received foreign dignitaries and tribute bearers, the intricate reliefs adorning its staircases, depicting processions of representatives from all the empire's diverse nations, each bringing their unique gifts in peaceful homage, the grand palaces of Darius and his successors, and the immense treasury, filled with the empire's accumulated wealth. Every carved stone, every sculpted figure, radiated the power, harmony, and unique cosmopolitan nature of Darius's rule. Darius was also a deeply devout king. He was an ardent follower of Ahura Mazda, the supreme deity of Zoroastrianism, the faith that had been gaining quiet influence across the plateau. His numerous inscriptions, including the monumental Behistun text, consistently invoke Ahura Mazda, attributing his victories and his reign to divine favor. Darius saw himself as the champion of Asher, the cosmic truth and order, battling against Drudge, the forces of falsehood and chaos. This belief system gave a profound divine legitimacy to his rule and guided his administrative philosophy. His policy of religious tolerance, inherited from Cyrus, was not merely pragmatic, It was deeply rooted in the Zoroastrian principle of respecting the diverse peoples under Ahura Mazda's universal benevolent sway. He understood that a king's righteousness was intertwined with the well-being and freedom of his subjects. While Darius was primarily an organizer and builder, his long reign was not entirely devoid of external challenges. He continued the empire's expansion into Thrace and Macedonia, making them vassal states and extending Persian influence into southeastern Europe. This expansion, however, inevitably brought Persia into closer contact, and ultimately conflict, with the fiercely independent Greek city-states. He also led a difficult and ultimately unsuccessful campaign against the Scythians, nomadic tribes residing north of the Black Sea. This expedition, though not a defeat, showcased the practical limits of even the mighty Persian military in campaigning across vast, unhospitable steppes against elusive mounted warriors. It was a subtle lesson that even the greatest empires have boundaries to their reach. The stage was now set for the next dramatic chapter in Persian history, one that would pit the vast, organized power of the East against the nascent, fractious forces of the West. The spark that ignited this monumental conflict was the Ionian Revolt. Greek city-states on the coast of Asia Minor, under Persian rule, rose up in rebellion, seeking aid from their brethren across the Aegean Sea. This act of defiance would draw the great Persian Empire, with all its organized might, into a direct and legendary confrontation with the independent Greek city-states, forever altering the course of ancient history. The quiet hum of imperial administration was about to be met by the clamor of war. Let us now turn our attention to a chapter of Persian history that, while marked by conflict, will still be unfolded with a gentle and measured pace. This is the story of the Greco-Persian Wars, a monumental clash between the vast, centralized power of the Achaemenid Empire and the smaller, fiercely independent city-states of ancient Greece. It was a confrontation not just of armies, but of contrasting political systems and deeply held cultural values. The seeds of this conflict were subtly sown along the western fringes of the Persian Empire, in Ionia. Here, on the coast of Asia Minor, lived numerous Greek city-states that had gradually come under Persian rule. While Darius generally allowed them significant autonomy, their desire for self-governance, coupled with resentment over tribute and Persian-appointed tyrants, simmered beneath the surface. This simmering discontent finally erupted in 499 BCE with the Ionian Revolt. Imagine these Greek cities, once free, now yearning for their ancient liberties. When they rose in rebellion, they sought aid from their brethren across the Aegean Sea. Athens and Eretria, two prominent Greek city-states, hesitantly sent a small number of ships to support their Ionian kin. A daring act of defiance saw the Ionian rebels, aided by the Athenians, march inland and burn Sardis, the important Persian administrative capital in Lydia. This act, burning a city so close to the heart of Persian power, deeply angered King Darius. It was not just a revolt, it was a direct challenge to his authority, a slight he could not overlook. Darius swiftly and decisively moved to suppress the revolt. Over several years, his forces meticulously put down each rebellious city, restoring Persian control throughout Ionia by 493 BCE. The initial clash was over, but the fire had been lit. Darius, feeling personally insulted by Athens's involvement, now resolved to extend his empire's reach and punish these distant Greek cities. His first attempt to directly invade mainland Greece came in 492 BC, led by his son-in-law, Mardonius. The aim was clear: to reassert Persian dominance in the Aegean, secure Thrace and Macedonia, and punish Athens and Eretria. Imagine the vast Persian fleet and army moving westward. However, this expedition met a dramatic and unforeseen obstacle. As the fleet rounded the treacherous headland of Mount Athos, a furious storm descended upon them. The mighty waves, driven by strong winds, mercilessly smashed hundreds of Persian ships against the rocks, leading to an immense loss of men and material. Nature itself seemed to rise against the invaders. Though Mardonius successfully reconquered Thrace and subjugated Macedonia, the naval disaster at Athos forced a retreat, postponing the full invasion. 2 years later, in 490 BCE, Darius launched a second, more direct naval expedition. This time, a large Persian fleet, under the command of Datis and Artaphernes, sailed directly across the Aegean Sea. Their first target was Eretria, the city that had aided Ionia. Eretria was besieged and ultimately destroyed, its inhabitants enslaved, a stark warning to the other Greek city-states. From Eretria, the Persian fleet sailed across the narrow strait and landed on the shores of Marathon, a plain in Attica, not far from Athens. Imagine the sight: thousands of Persian soldiers, formidable and numerous, disembarking on the tranquil Greek shore. The Athenians faced a profound dilemma: should they wait for Spartan reinforcements, or face the colossal Persian force alone? They chose to fight. Under the brilliant leadership of their general Miltiades, the Athenian army, despite being significantly outnumbered, marched to meet the invaders. The ensuing Battle of Marathon was a pivotal moment. Miltiades employed a daring strategy. He intentionally weakened the center of his battle line, while strengthening the wings. When the Persian forces advanced, their strong center initially pushed through the Athenian middle. But the powerful Greek wings then enveloped the Persian flanks, creating a deadly vice. The Persian army, caught by surprise, was thrown into confusion. They broke and fled back to their ships. The Greek victory was absolute, stunning, and utterly unexpected. It was the first major setback for the seemingly invincible Persian Empire on European soil. For the Greeks, particularly the Athenians, it was an immense boost to their morale, a quiet affirmation of their independence. For Darius, it was a profound insult, a personal affront that fueled his determination to launch an even grander, overwhelming invasion. However, Darius never saw that third invasion come to pass. He died in 486 BCE, while meticulously planning the colossal undertaking. The mantle of empire then passed to his son, Xerxes I. Xerxes, initially hesitant to embark on such a massive and challenging war, first had to contend with fresh revolts in Egypt and, surprisingly, in Babylon. He swiftly and firmly suppressed these internal challenges, demonstrating his own strength and ensuring the stability of his vast realm before turning his full attention to the west. Having secured his empire, Xerxes committed to his father's grand plan. In 480 BCE, he launched an invasion of Greece on a scale unprecedented in ancient history. Imagine an army of hundreds of thousands, gathered from every corner of the vast Persian Empire, marching in an endless column. His navy, too, numbered in the hundreds of ships. It was the largest military force ever assembled at that time, a testament to the organizational power of Persia. The sheer scale of this invasion demanded monumental feats of engineering. To cross the narrow strait of the Hellespont into Europe, Xerxes commanded the construction of 2 magnificent pontoon bridges, built from ships lashed together, stretching for miles across the water. Imagine the sight: a continuous bridge over the sea, along which his immense army marched. To avoid the disastrous fate that had befallen his father's fleet at Mount Athos, Xerxes ordered the digging of a canal through the Athos Peninsula, allowing his ships to pass safely. These were not just engineering marvels, they were powerful symbols of Persian might, demonstrating that even nature could be bent to the will of the King of Kings. As this colossal force advanced, the disparate Greek city-states, faced with existential threat, slowly began to unite. They formed the Hellenic League, a rare moment of cooperation in their often fractious history. Their strategy was to delay the Persians at key choke points and engage them at sea. The first great confrontation came at Thermopylae, a narrow coastal pass in northern Greece. Here, a small force of Greeks, most famously 300 Spartans led by King Leonidas, along with several thousand allies, bravely stood against the overwhelming Persian tide. Imagine the Spartans, resolute in their defense, holding the narrow passage for 2 days, inflicting heavy casualties on the Persians. It was a testament to their valor and discipline. However, a local Greek traitor named Ephialtes revealed a hidden mountain path that allowed a Persian detachment to outflank the defenders. Leonidas, knowing his position was hopeless, ordered most of his allies to retreat, while he and his 300 Spartans, along with a few hundred Thespians and the bands, made a heroic last stand. They were annihilated, but their sacrifice became an enduring symbol of courage and defiance. While a tactical victory for Persia, Thermopylae was a profound moral victory for the Greeks. It bought precious time for the main Greek forces to prepare. Simultaneously, a naval battle was fought at Artemisium, off the coast. The Greek and Persian fleets engaged in indecisive skirmishes. Though the Persians had numerical superiority, the smaller, more agile Greek ships held their own in the narrow waters. Ultimately, learning of the fall of Thermopylae, the Greek fleet strategically retreated, preserving their ships for a decisive encounter. With the northern pass breached, the path to central Greece was open. The Persian army marched into Attica and, to the sorrow of the Athenians, sacked and burned the largely evacuated city of Athens. Imagine the flames licking the sacred Acropolis, a poignant moment of devastation. However, the true turning point of the war came at sea, in the Battle of Salamis. The brilliant Athenian general Themistocles masterfully lured the massive Persian fleet into the narrow straits between the island of Salamis and the mainland. Here, the sheer size and number of the Persian ships became a disadvantage. Their cumbersome formations became disorganized in the confined waters, making them vulnerable. The smaller, more maneuverable Greek triremes, powered by skilled rowers, rammed and sank Persian ships in chaotic close-quarters combat. The battle was a resounding, decisive victory for the Greeks, and a catastrophic defeat for the Persian navy. Imagine the chaos, the shattered ships, and the immense loss of Persian naval power. With his fleet largely destroyed and his supply lines threatened, Xerxes made the strategic decision to return to Persia, leaving a significant portion of his land army under the command of his general, Mardonius, to continue the war in Greece. The final major engagements occurred in 479 BCE. The remaining Persian land forces under Mardonius met the combined might of the Greek army, primarily Spartans and Athenians, at the Battle of Plataea. After a tense standoff, the Greeks, fighting with disciplined phalanxes, achieved a decisive victory. Mardonius himself was killed, and the Persian land army was utterly routed. On the very same day, or shortly thereafter, the remaining Persian fleet and land forces in Asia Minor were destroyed by the Greeks at the Battle of Mycale. This twin victory cemented the end of the Persian invasions of mainland Greece. The Greco-Persian Wars, while marking a significant setback for the Achaemenid Empire, were not a catastrophic defeat that led to its immediate collapse. The vast empire remained largely intact, its core wealthy and powerful. However, these wars forever changed the geopolitical landscape. Persia lost control of its Aegean territories and abandoned any further direct expansion into Europe. For the Greeks, the wars sparked a golden age, particularly for Athens, and fostered a strong sense of Hellenic identity and independence. For Persia, it was a moment of reflection, a subtle shift in focus from ambitious external conquests to consolidating its vast internal structure and facing new challenges from within. The empire, though bruised, remained a formidable power, now turning its attention inward to refine its complex tapestry. Our tranquil journey through the vast tapestry of the Persian Empire now approaches its final, poignant chapters. Having successfully repelled the Greek invasions, the Achaemenid Empire, though still immensely powerful and far-reaching, entered a new phase. The era of relentless external expansion began to recede, giving way to a period focused more on internal consolidation, intricate diplomacy, and, eventually, a subtle, gradual decline. For nearly 2 centuries after the Greek Wars, Persia remained a dominant force, its vastness and wealth unquestioned, but its internal dynamics began to shift. Imagine the empire, still a grand and magnificent structure, but now facing different challenges. Instead of constant conquest, its power was often wielded through diplomacy and financial influence. Even after the direct invasion ceased, Persia remained a major player in Greek affairs. The great king often acted as a mediator, a financier, or even a silent arbiter in the frequent conflicts between the Greek city-states. A striking example of this enduring influence was the King's Peace, also known as the Peace of Antalcidas, in 387 BCE. This was a treaty dictated by Artaxerxes II, where Persian influence essentially set the terms for peace among the warring Greek states. It demonstrated that even without direct military presence in mainland Greece, Persia held significant sway, subtly guiding the course of events in the Western world. Later, under Artaxerxes III, the empire even managed to reconquer Egypt in 343 BC, a testament to its lingering strength and capacity to regain lost territories, albeit temporarily. However, beneath this veneer of continued power, internal challenges began to subtly fray the edges of the grand Persian tapestry. A recurring and increasingly destabilizing theme was the struggle for succession within the royal family. After Xerxes I, the throne often became a perilous seat. Imagine the quiet whispers of intrigue, the shadows of palace coups, and the sudden, often violent, deaths of kings. Figures like Xerxes II, Darius II, Artaxerxes II, and Artaxerxes III often spent their reigns contending with rival brothers, ambitious sons, or rebellious factions. For instance, Artaxerxes II had to fight a major civil war against his younger brother, Cyrus the Younger, a conflict vividly depicted by the Greek historian Xenophon. This constant internal strife, these struggles for the throne, quietly drained royal authority and diverted resources away from sound governance. This weakening of central authority also emboldened the powerful satraps, the provincial governors. While Darius had meticulously designed his satrapy system with checks and balances, over time, some satraps began to amass significant personal wealth and power, sometimes acting almost as independent rulers. This led to periods of open defiance, culminating in events like the Great Satraps' Revolt in the mid-4th century BCE. During this period, powerful governors across Asia Minor and Syria formed alliances and openly rebelled against the great king. Suppressing these widespread revolts was a difficult and costly endeavor, further straining the empire's resources and highlighting a growing fracture in its unity. Maintaining such a vast empire was an inherently expensive undertaking. The constant need to fund a standing army, support the elaborate imperial administration, and finance grand construction projects put a continuous economic strain on the empire. While Persia remained immensely wealthy, the cumulative cost of internal suppression and occasional external wars began to take its toll. Some central areas might have experienced a subtle decline, while the peripheries, under strong local satraps, sometimes prospered more independently. There was also a subtle shift in the nature of kingship itself. The later Achaemenid kings, while still revered, seemed to become more isolated, more distant from the day-to-day realities of governance and military leadership. Imagine them perhaps more ensconced in the opulent palaces of Susa or Persepolis, less personally involved in leading armies or directly administering justice, a contrast to the hands-on approaches of Cyrus and Darius. This growing distance from their subjects and their military affairs perhaps contributed to a perceived weakening of their direct royal authority and charisma. The Persian military also underwent changes, with an increasing reliance on skilled Greek mercenaries. While effective fighters, this reliance meant a subtle shift away from the disciplined, fervent Persian core that had once been the empire's backbone, perhaps indicating a quiet decline in the traditional Persian military discipline and zeal. As the Persian Empire faced these quiet internal struggles, a new power was steadily, almost imperceptibly, rising on its western flank, Macedon. This kingdom, nestled in the northern part of Greece, had once been a peripheral state, even a Persian vassal. But under the brilliant and ambitious leadership of Philip II, Macedon transformed. Philip meticulously forged a formidable, disciplined army and, through a combination of military victories and shrewd diplomacy, managed to unite the fractious Greek city-states into the Corinthian League, with himself as its undisputed leader. His ultimate ambition, often framed as a pan-Hellenic crusade to avenge past Persian invasions, was to lead a united Greek force against the Achaemenid Empire. However, Philip's grand plans were abruptly cut short by his assassination in 336 BC, a sudden twist that shifted the fate of two empires. The mantle of leadership in Macedon then fell to his extraordinarily talented son, Alexander III, forever known as Alexander the Great. Young, brilliant, and inheriting his father's perfectly honed army and his boundless ambition, Alexander was driven by a deep sense of destiny and a burning desire to surpass his father's achievements. In 334 BCE, Alexander led his united Greek and Macedonian forces across the Hellespont, reversing the symbolic journey Xerxes had made over a century earlier. This was not just an invasion, it was presented as an act of retribution, but also an unparalleled opportunity to seize the vast wealth of the Persian Empire. The ensuing years saw a series of monumental battles that would decide the fate of the ancient world. Alexander's first major encounter with Persian forces came at the Battle of the Granicus River in 334 BCE, in western Asia Minor. Here, Alexander decisively defeated a combined force of Persian satraps and Greek mercenaries, signaling his formidable presence. His advance continued, methodical and unstoppable. The crucial confrontation arrived at the Battle of Issus in 333 BCE. Here, Alexander's army met the massive forces of Darius III, the last Achaemenid king of kings, who personally led his army into battle. Despite being vastly outnumbered, Alexander's brilliant tactics and the discipline of his phalanx proved superior. Darius III was forced to flee the battlefield, abandoning his royal chariot and, poignantly, his family, who were captured by Alexander. This was a devastating blow to Persian prestige and morale. Instead of immediately pursuing the fleeing Darius, Alexander methodically secured the Mediterranean coast, eliminating Persian naval bases and ensuring his supply lines. He laid siege to the formidable island city of Tyre, a long and arduous undertaking, before finally capturing it. Then, in 332 BCE, he marched into Egypt, where he was largely welcomed as a liberator from Persian rule. In a symbolic gesture, he visited the oracle at the Siwa oasis and was proclaimed as son of Amun, embracing Egyptian traditions much as Cyrus had adopted Babylonian ones. The final, decisive clash between Alexander and Darius III occurred at the Battle of Gaugamela in 331 BCE, on the plains near modern-day Mosul. This was perhaps the largest battle of the ancient world, with Darius having assembled an immense army from every corner of his empire, deploying chariots and war elephants. Imagine the sheer scale, the thunder of hooves, the glint of countless spears. Yet, Alexander's tactical genius shone brightest. He executed a daring maneuver, creating a gap in the Persian lines and driving his elite companion cavalry directly towards Darius himself. Darius, once again, was forced to flee, and his vast army disintegrated. This was the final, crushing blow to the Achaemenid military power. Following Gaugamela, Alexander systematically marched into the great Persian capitals. Babylon opened its gates peacefully, welcoming Alexander, who, much like Cyrus before him, wisely respected local customs and religious practices. Next came Susa, the ancient administrative capital, where Alexander captured immense quantities of gold and treasures accumulated over centuries. Then, Alexander marched to Persepolis, the magnificent ceremonial capital, the very heart of the Achaemenid dynasty. Its capture was a highly symbolic moment. And in a controversial act that continues to be debated, the grand palace of Persepolis was burned to the ground. Some ancient accounts attribute it to a drunken act during a celebratory feast, perhaps at the instigation of a courtesan. Others suggest it was a calculated act of revenge for the burning of Athens by Xerxes over a century earlier. Whatever the motive, the towering flames consuming the symbol of Achaemenid power marked an undeniable end of an era. Alexander then continued his relentless pursuit of Darius III, first to Ecbatana and then further east. The final, tragic end for Darius III came in 330 BCE. He was assassinated by his own satrap, Bessus, who hoped to gain favor with Alexander or perhaps establish his own rule. When Alexander found Darius's body, he reportedly showed great respect for his fallen adversary, condemning Bessus for his treachery and later having him executed in a horrific manner. With the death of Darius III, the glorious Achaemenid dynasty, which had ruled for over 2 centuries, definitively came to its quiet end. Yet, the fall of the Achaemenid Empire to Alexander the Great was not the end of Persia, nor the end of its profound influence. The legacy of this vast and pioneering empire lived on, shaping the world for centuries to come. Its administrative model was truly revolutionary. The satrapy system, with its checks and balances, its standardized taxation, its efficient road networks, and its sophisticated postal service, became a blueprint for future empires. The Hellenistic kingdoms that emerged after Alexander's death, and even the Roman Empire, borrowed heavily from Persian administrative genius. The very vastness of the Achaemenid Empire fostered an incredible cultural exchange and blending. Persian art, architecture, and philosophical ideas flowed westward, influencing Greek thought, while Greek artistic and intellectual traditions found a receptive home in the East. Persepolis itself stands as a silent testament to this magnificent synthesis of styles. Cyrus and Darius's pioneering policy of religious tolerance was a remarkable precedent, a testament to a broader vision of empire that sought loyalty through respect rather than forced assimilation. This humane approach set a standard that would echo through history. The Achaemenids also left behind the powerful idea of a universal empire, a multi-ethnic, centralized realm under a just and divinely appointed ruler upholding cosmic order. This grand vision resonated deeply and influenced later imperial constructs. Finally, while the Achaemenid dynasty fell, the spirit and continuity of Iranian identity endured. The Persian people, their language, culture, and ancient traditions persisted. In time, new Persian empires, the Parthians and later the mighty Sasanians, would rise from these very lands, drawing inspiration from the glorious Achaemenid past, continuing the rich tapestry of Iranian history. And so, our gentle journey through the rise and fall of the Persian Empire comes to its natural close. From the subtle migrations across ancient grasslands to the grand vision of Cyrus, the organizational genius of Darius, and the ultimate, poignant encounter with Alexander, we have witnessed a civilization that profoundly shaped the ancient world.